Hi, I'm Zach Sneed, and I'm joined by Andrew Russo. We are employment specialists with VCU RRTC, and today we'll be covering key terms for employers. So just an overview of what we're going to be looking at today. We're going to be talking about person-first language, disabilities, the job coach's role and some terms they may use, working with people with disabilities, and types of employment. So let's move on to our first slide where Andrew's going to talk about person-first language.
Person-first language emphasizes the individuality, equality, and dignity of people with disabilities. Rather than defining people primarily by their disability, person-first language conveys respect by emphasizing the fact that people with disabilities are first and foremost just that, people. This is a way to avoid making someone's disability the only thing that comes to mind when they think of a person and humanizes them more. For example, say Stacy has autism rather than Stacy is autistic to emphasize that autism is only one part of who Stacy is.
Thank you, Andrew. So now we're going to talk about disabilities overall. So a disability is a mental condition, a mental or physical condition that limits a person's movements, senses, or activities. A physical disability can affect an individual's mobility, stamina, or dexterity. Some examples of these can be brain or spinal injuries, cerebral palsy, respiratory, visual, or hearing disabilities. An intellectual disability can affect an individual's ability to think and understand. Life skills that can be impacted include certain conceptual, social, and practical skills. And examples of these are autism spectrum disorder, or ASD as it's referred to, Down syndrome, or developmental delay. And then some of the side effects of these disabilities can be sensory sensitivity. Sensory sensitivity is when a person is extra sensitive to their sensory channels. This can take the form of a hearing sensitivity to loud or high-pitched noises, brightness to light, or even smells. We're going to move to our next slide to hear about the job coach's role.
A job coach is a person who helps a person obtain and maintain employment. Job coaches help individuals find the right job, develop accommodations, and work to ensure that both the employer and the employee are satisfied. Job coaches sometimes have individuals complete situational assessments, which is where they perform certain tasks so everyone can better understand their strengths, growth areas, and interests. After this, job coaches help individuals find a job, develop necessary accommodations, and help train them until they are able to do the job independently. As this develops, job coaches will fade, which means they will work with the individual less and less until they are fully independent. Once independence is reached, the individual will enter what is called follow-on, which is where job coaches provide check-ins to ensure everyone is satisfied rather than to provide training. A reasonable workplace accommodation is a support that helps an individual with a disability perform their job effectively. I personally had an individual who performed janitorial work at a gym and used a motorized chair, which made it difficult for her to clean certain places. One accommodation for her was an extendable dustbuster that made it easier for her to clean certain areas. This is just one example of how accommodations must be based on the specific person's needs and their job in order to ensure they are truly beneficial.
So now we're going to talk about some things that you, the employer, should know. So when you're working with individuals with disabilities, there are some important things to know. As we talked about in the previous slide about reasonable accommodations in the workplace, it should also be noted that there are undue hardships. And undue hardships are accommodations that would place a substantial hardship on a business. An example of this can be buying expensive equipment or having to build a new entrance or area for the individual to gain access. So now that we're also talking about access, it's important to think about how accessible is your place of employment. Does it have a handicap accessible entrance to allow individuals with disabilities access? Some client, and then such as ramps or automatic doorways. Some clients may have service animals to assist them with their daily functions. Seeing eye dogs are a great example of a service animal. And it's important to recognize that the service animal is performing an essential duty and should not be treated as you would an average pet. Next is going to be essential functions. And these are necessary tasks for a role that an accommodation can be developed. And as we heard earlier from Andrew about accommodations for his client to perform her essential functions in the gym.
Next, we're going to talk about different types of employment. Integrated employment is when people with disabilities work alongside people without disabilities. This differs from environments that are made specifically for people with disabilities. Next is competitive employment, which describes work where someone with a disability is paid the same amount as someone without a disability. This is essential in assuring that people with disabilities are given the same opportunities as anyone else. Next is supported employment, which is a type of employment where an individual with a disability works with a job coach to find and maintain employment, including developing accommodations to help them with their role. Lastly, customized employment involves modifying a role to meet the specific needs of the individual and the employer. Zach will give us an example of a situation where he customized a job.
So I used to work with a client who was looking for flexible hours that were in the afternoon and late morning or early afternoon, and was also along the bus route that they could utilize. And using my connections in former connections in working in hospitality, I worked with a local hostel, and after meeting with the manager, I learned that the business was small enough that only the front desk was in charge of pretty much all functions within the hostel. The front desk was in charge of not only checking in guests and making reservations, but also for cleaning the hostel from top to bottom, including changing beds, cleaning the rooms, and doing laundry. So by working with the manager, we were able to create a customized position that allowed my client the flexibility and schedule for them to come in and clean the common rooms and guest bedrooms, as well as do the laundry. And this was able to free up the front desk, who now had more time to work with checking in guests and making reservations, and just helping them in general. So in closing, we hope that this has been helpful, and it's important to remember the following: that hiring people with disabilities can provide many benefits to your business. Job coaches work to ensure the satisfaction of both the employee and the employer. And the way we talk about people with disabilities has a strong effect on them and the people around them. Thank you for listening. And for more videos, training, and other resources, please check out the VCU RRTC website. Thank you.
Thank you.